Hey guys, Inferno here, and today I'm bringing you another review. This time it's for One Piece Odyssey, so hopefully you enjoy. The story of One Piece takes place on an island named Wafud, where the gang are stranded after the ship was broken after entering a storm. You meet a girl named Lim and a guy named Aldo on the island. After a few events with them, you are tasked to defeat the Colossus around the island to regain your strength. In the process of this, you visit 4 areas that the crew have visited previously on their journeys. These are Alabasta, Water 7, Marinefoot, and Dressrosa. Certain events have slightly changed while visiting these areas, but for the most part they have stayed the same to an extent. As for the story goes, this is all I can say. I don't really want to get too into details because we all know how people are with spoilers. Now, the pacing of the story, the game is split into 8 chapters and 1 final chapter, so essentially 9. The first 7 to 10 hours I would say are very tedious. I would say, like, it's quite the slog. Like, you're literally just running around and walking pretty much, especially in Alabasta, and you can't really fast travel until like probably like halfway through chapter 2 pretty much. And even then, if you're doing side quests as well, it adds on a lot more time as well. Now, if you can get through this is where the game starts to pick up the pace, and the following areas are not as long as Alabasta. Overall, Alabasta is probably like the longest arc in the game. With that said, the story in the game in itself, like as a whole, is pretty good. You know, so the characters, okay, Lim was a bit meh at the start. Like, sometimes you wouldn't even notice that she's there. Aldo's pretty good, although he likes to laugh like at every interaction that he wants to talk. But later on, it does start to pick up and it does get a bit more interesting. So, yes, story at the start, you know, a bit off here and there, but later on, I enjoyed myself thoroughly with it. Gameplay in One Piece Odyssey is turn-based, which is a change from the usual that we tend to get with One Piece games, usually like more action-adventure type or Muso type, which is what is more or less known for. People was a bit worried about this at the start, but honestly, with what they've shown before and what I've played, you know, there's not really too much to worry about. I feel they got the formula right for the most part, where they can also improve in some other areas as well. Now, when it comes to attacking, there are 3 types in the game. There are power, speed, and technical, each with being effective to one type while being weak to another. With this, you can more or less strategize on who you should attack with and maximize the damage you do to an enemy. Some enemies will also be weak to elemental attacks, so for example, an enemy can be weak to power as well as fire, so if you use Luffy's like Red Hawk move, you're essentially dealing like double the damage as well. However, this can also be applied to teammates as well, so for example, if an enemy is using a fire type move while being super effective against a technical type, you're essentially going to take more damage yourself. To also add on to the battle sim, you can swap out members that are not in battle, or some members that are in battle, but you can swap around where they are in the area. So for example, if an enemy is like more effective than the person that you're controlling, you can swap to someone else or someone that's out of the party and essentially, you know, negate that situation pretty much. And you're also not penalized for this, because in some games when you do swap out, you basically use a turn, but in this game you can essentially continuously swap out without no issues whatsoever, which kind of makes it more easy, but it's not the worst. Auto battle mode is also a feature as well, where essentially it does the battling for you, and you can also use this in conjunction with the speed up option that is available as well in the battle. So if you're trying to grind for more levels or something, or trying to go for platinum, this is pretty much the way to go, more or less. Although, you know, when it comes to auto battling, most of the time they don't really strategize well, they just use whatever, so sometimes it might be faster to just do it yourself. Now, in terms of exploring, when you're in the world, you can only control Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Chopper, Nami, and Robin. Brook and Frankie are also there, but they are not usable in the world. Although with Frankie, you can use his ability to like build bridges to reach certain new areas for like treasures and stuff. They all have their perks of using them. So for example, Luffy can stretch to go to a different area, Zoro can cut down steel boxes and gates, Nami can find money on the floors, Sanji can find ingredients on the floor, while Robin, she can also find, I guess you can more or less call it manuscripts. Can't remember the name for it, but essentially it's good for not much really, just unless you're going for like 100% more or less. And then you have Chopper, who's basically allows you to go into areas where only small people can go into. Now, to add on to the gameplay section, the equipment in the game works slightly different to the like usual JRPGs. characters kind of have like a grid-like system where they can slot in accessories where you either find it through chest or if you buy it through the shops that you like go through like throughout the world. And with these accessories, they essentially give you boost to your stats, or like attack, TP up, more crit, more guts, resistance to ice, whatever, all of this stuff. So there's like a lot to play with, though at the start of the game you're kind of limited onto what you can use, but eventually you get the option to fuse accessories, which honestly kind of like, I want to say breaks the game, but it just makes it so much easier. Essentially, once you get that ability with Robin, it's like around chapter 3, you can fuse different attributes to the accessory. So if you've got an accessory that has like 4 slots, essentially at the start you can only do up to 2, then later on you can do up to 3, and then 4 like near the end of the game. So you can add like 4 attack attributes and essentially deal like insane damage, especially to like enemies that are weak against you, which is what I done for Zoro, because literally that was all it's good for. But you can mix and match. You can also like add stuff to say, oh, I want to have like more resistance to ice or something, because some teammates are actually like really bad when it comes to ice characters. Essentially if they get hit with an ice move, that's it, they're frozen pretty much. Overall, I think with this equipment or fusion accessory stuff, I think they actually got it quite right for the most part. I think there are some improvements that can be made to it, which I'll talk about in a minute, but overall it is actually a decent system that they've done for this. Now, the version that I played was the PC version, and overall I had no problems whatsoever. Bearing in mind I do have quite a beefy PC system, but most times when I play a Bandai Namco game, excluding Sword Art Online because that was just a hot mess on PC for whatever reason, this game runs fine for the most part. You have resolutions up to 4K, you have up to unlimited FPS. You can choose from between like 30 to unlimited, so you've got 30, 60, 120, and then literally unlimited. As for ultra wide, I can't confirm, but I doubt it's in the game. Probably someone modded it in at some point. The game itself had no stutters whatsoever, and the only time it did go into like 30 FPS was for like the pre-rendered cutscenes, which you know, I'm not the biggest fan, but it's not a game breaker for me. But I wish they could actually just keep it 60. There is also keyboard and mouse support, so for those that don't use controllers, it is there for you and it does work quite well. Honestly, I gave it a try and it wasn't too bad, but you know, for this type of game I just usually use controller for comfort. Now, the only issue I had with this, and I don't know if it's just the PC port or the game itself, is that whenever you switch a character through the quick menu, the sound of the music, or I should say the music itself, really goes very quiet and it doesn't pick back up for some reason until you either go back into the menu, back out, or go to the character menu and then back out again, which was very annoying because sometimes you go into battle and you can barely hear the music for whatever reason. Now, there can be some improvements to the game itself, which, you know, is not like a game breaker at all, but you know, it could make for a better experience, I would say. For one, there should be an auto advanced text option. I don't know why it was not in the game, but my god, the amount of times that I've accidentally skipped not even a cutscene, but someone talking pretty much was like too much. Yeah, I could easily like put it down and wait, but usually there's always an auto advance in these types of games, so I don't know what happened there. Hopefully they can patch it in at some point. Another issue is using accessories. While it's not as bad as it seems, to be fair, when it comes to say removing an effect, which you can do as well, you have to go to a specific NPC like throughout the worlds you visit, more or less. You will see a few of them on the world anyway, and it kind of just like slows the process. You really should be able to just do it, I wouldn't say on the fly, but where you can make your accessories, just to have it there to make it all seamless. And like essentially, instead of doing it one by one, which is what the game does, I wish you could actually select, you know, multiple and just get rid of them quickly on that specific accessory. But again, it should have been like that, honestly. Now, as for the character speed on the world map, it could be a bit faster as some areas are quite long and big to traverse, especially when you don't have access to fast travel because of like story stuff. essentially, Alabaster is probably like the best example I can give, because there's one area where it's quite big and you could not fast travel whatsoever, and if you're going back and forth, it just eats up all your time. Now, speaking of fast travel, honestly, I think it should have been made available earlier in the game to compensate the amount of times you'll be going back and forth, which, again, it really eats up into the time. Now, as I said, it's not a game breaker, but honestly, it could make for a much better experience overall. And, hopefully they actually do take it into consideration. One final note on this, as I literally kind of forgot, is that the game has no difficulty options. And honestly, I'll be very, very surprised if people even game over in this game, because it's very hard to, like, you've got so much at your dispense. It's really crazy, to even like think of game over in this game, unless you just do not care whatsoever. I think if they added in a hard mode or something, I think it would have made it a bit easier. By the time I reached mid-game, literally I was just steamrolling through everything, really. Even like some of the bosses, like, they pose like no challenge whatsoever. My final thoughts on the game for One Piece Odyssey, I would say it's a very solid entry for JRPG fans who want to sink in like 30-40 plus hours into the game, or even more if you're going for like 100%. And if you're a One Piece fan, I'll obviously say pick up the game, because the story in itself is quite interesting. Now, I would say that the beginning, as I said before, the beginning of the game is probably like the worst part of it, honestly. But once you pass that, it comes a much more bearable game, and actually an enjoyable game for that much, I would say. So I'll give the game like an 8 out of 10, really. If they have those improvements, maybe it can bump it up a bit. But overall, it's a good game. Now, I hope you enjoyed the review. If you got any questions and stuff, you know where to find me. Comments down below, Twitter, all of that stuff. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.